Hi, welcome back to the Chamber of Spoilers. I'm Rachel, and today we're going to be talking about the worst books that I read in 2021. Not necessarily the worst books that came out in 2021, but the worst ones that I read. Some of these are actually 2022 books that I will release larger reviews of in time, which will be negative. But generally speaking, I read books either the year or the year before they come out, now that I am more into the reviewing side of things, just because I don't have a lot of time. And reading has to be both for fun and for work. So there you go. You may notice that during this video, I will be knitting my friend Joanna's Christmas present, but it's fine, even though today is New Year's Day when I'm filming this, but she is not Christian, she's pagan, so I'm pretty sure it's cool that I haven't given it to her yet and that I haven't finished it. Shut up, I'm totally gonna finish it. It's gonna be done. It's actually just a simple stitch, so it's not like it's like a crazy project. I just am lazy and bad at doing gifts. I'm actually doing this video because I saw one comment, exactly one comment from someone requesting like, oh, are you gonna do this video again? And I was like, ooh, should I? Just literally anyone suggesting I do anything that they liked before. I'm just like, oh great, validation. I will totally do that. I'm just starving for creative motivation. So any person asking for something, I'm like, great, I will do that. I also just love talking about books. Like anyone who wants to talk about books with me, I will talk about books all the livelong day. Even people who do not want to talk about it have to hear about it often. These aren't all books that I like capital H hate. They're just books that I read this year that just did not fly with me for some reason. And if you did like this book, no shade to you. I'm sure it had your things for you. I don't think any of these books are like morally wrong. Like generally speaking, aside from books that have really harmful messaging, I don't think that there is bad reading. I've made it a really big kind of proponent on my channel that all reading is good reading. Like whatever you read that you enjoy and that brings you joy in life, hold on to that. This Vale of Tears is so difficult. However you get through it, I support you. I support you. That's my soapbox for this video. All reading is good reading. Just because I don't like these books doesn't mean that they're inherently bad unless there's, I don't know, bad messaging. There are a lot of books made for young adults that I'm like, ooh, this is concerning because of the audience reading them. But generally speaking, like books geared toward adults, aside from things that might like be genuinely harmful, and that's why you need trigger warnings, there is no bad reading. All reading is good. I mostly read romance this year because I needed like comfort and joy. It's been really hard to find this last 2 years. For a long time, I was actually like a read it through, never give it up, always get through the whole book completist reader. But I've really given up on that in the last couple of years because life is short. I know that's not like a new observation, but life is short. I basically have a limited amount of leisure time and I'm not gonna spend it reading books that I hate unless it's for a good reason. Like for example, I wanna see if the book can turn around, or I think the book has some redeeming qualities that I want to give it my full attention for. And usually I'll only read a book all the way if I care about a book that comes after. I sometimes have a compelling reason to read a book all the way through, but these days, if I don't like something, I'm going to put it down. And that's, I think, a really fair thing to do. Like, I think when you give a book a fair shake, you don't owe anyone your attention. The only time I would say that I feel like I have to read a book is if a friend wrote one and they asked me to read it. Like that's a time when I'd be like, okay, I have a social obligation. But as a reader, you don't owe anybody your time. So if you don't like a book, put it down. It's fine. The author isn't gonna know if you don't tell them. So like you can just keep that to yourself. Oh, I really hope none of the writers, no, these people are relatively successful. They're not gonna be like Googling their names and like looking for like really low list J-tier YouTubers. J-tier YouTuber. First book that really rubbed me the wrong way this year was Love Her Loser by Tessa Bailey. It was just such a weird take from her. I don't like a lot of her earlier books. The funny thing is that I read 2 of her other books this year and I totally loved them. The Ballinger sisters books were amazing. They're just, one of them came out this year and I think the next one comes out next year. But I loved those. They definitely, at least one of them would make my top books of this year. And then this look, Love Her or Loser, is in the bottom books of this year. I guess I really hated it because the relationship stuff was completely incomprehensible to me. Like I'm sure some people do have separate finances from their spouses and some people really have trouble communicating. But I really can't imagine a non-abusive marriage where one person buys and sells houses without talking to the other person. One person like just makes unilateral decisions like that and the other person doesn't leave them. I think as a marriage in trouble book, it really doesn't work because like they really don't have any communication and I don't know that they have any chemistry like romantically. It just seems to be all about like sexual chemistry with them, which in my opinion doesn't work. And like if they do love each other, I I don't see it. I also think that, like, how have they been married for 10 years? Because they don't seem to, like, have any kind of relationship built together. It's like they married each other 2 months ago and they haven't spoken since. And why doesn't Rosie have any friends that call her on, like, hey, you seem miserable in both your job and your marriage. What's going on? Like, she has no friends. I get that her family is, like, dead, but it seems like she doesn't have, like, a life of her own. It doesn't seem very well realized. The thing is, like, for a marriage in trouble novel, I really have to buy that there is love there and something worth saving. In my opinion, 10 years of marriage is not something to walk away from lightly, but if you and your spouse barely speak and you're miserable in every aspect of your life, maybe you should walk away. Maybe you should leave, especially if you're 28 and, like, haven't accomplished anything you've set out to do yet. I think that maybe it was a bad thing. In romance novels, there's a lot of, like, assigning blame, like who's in the wrong and who's in the right and who has to grovel and fix it. Groveling is, like, in my opinion, like the grand gesture. I don't really like it for the most part, like, as a device, but Dominic is one of those heroes that's, like, all grand gesture, no substance. Like, he's like, I'm gonna buy her a house and make it into a home for us, and that will make things good. And then he's like, well, never mind, she wants the restaurant more, I'm gonna make her a restaurant. And, like, I think he illustrates all the problems with the grand gesture guy. Like, you don't need someone who can, like, buy you a restaurant. You need somebody who could remember to get milk. I generally didn't like that series. I find like, house flipping in romance to be very overdone these days. House flipping is one of the careers in romance that I find very difficult to stomach, partially because, like, renovating houses and artificially inflating their value is kind of a bad thing to do. And while house flipping, like, does put money back in the economy and it is important, and, like, I do think that having, like, better value housing is good, I also think that, like, all of these, it makes it look super easy. Like, there are actual skills involved in, like, making a space livable for human beings and making it safe. I was in maintenance for 2 or 3 years in college, and, like, there are things that I'm just not qualified to do. I would never do electric work because I know I would kill myself. And I get very frustrated by all of these, like, people who are like, I'm gonna flip my own house for the very first time and it's gonna be great. I'll just rip out all the walls and put in white cabinets. Like, that's not how it works. You have to know what you're doing, and you have to be safe, and you have to get all your permits and shit. Like, I don't know, that was very frustrating to me. I really don't like that trend in romance. I guess this is just a me ranting about 2021 video and, like, all of my feelings. Oof. Also, like, opening a restaurant as a non-professional cook who, like, hasn't been to culinary school seems pretty dubious considering the failure rate of restaurants. Like, she has no professional cooking experience. She's never even been a waitress. Given the failure rate of restaurants, maybe they shouldn't base their entire future on it. They seem to have, like, a lot of money for 28-year-olds. Because I guess maybe he saved really good after he was in the army and he makes good money as a contractor, but, like, I don't know, don't blow your savings on opening a restaurant, kids. Watch Kitchen Nightmares, you'll know what I'm talking about. So this book is maybe the worst one that I read all year in terms of, like, quality. It was, I believe, self-published, which isn't always an indictment of a bad book. Like, I think when people say, like, self-published vibes, what they mean is unedited. Because a lot of books that I read that are self-published are super amazing. Like, some of the best writers I currently follow are in the self-published space, and most romance writers do self-pub, indie pub, and drive pub. I think people vastly misunderstand self-publishing, but this book fulfills all of those tropes. It does not feel as though it's been edited. It does not feel as though it's experienced any of the growth one would expect of a book that has gone from a draft to a final version. I'm going to read you the title, and you're going to have an idea of what I'm talking about in terms of unfocused. The Yellow Star That Wasn't, Scandinavia, Miami, and Me, wartime Jews in Scandinavia, from Helsinki to a Miami Beach obsession. That is the title of this book, Pippin. Oh, who's a handsome boy? You are. Now, is that too long of a title? Yes. Does it have one too many clauses? Yes. Is this book worth reading? No. So I read this book for a work obligation, and it was really bad. I was interested initially in the premise. I don't know a lot about Scandinavia, especially how Scandinavia handled World War II, but this book is so many things. It is even more confused than its title. So it is part memoir, full of, by the way, unhealed trauma. This woman is so traumatized. She is so deeply traumatized. I don't know how she gets up in the morning. She has, like, a bad marriage, and then a bad engagement, and then I think a good second marriage. I think she has serious emotional problems, and that is very evident in the text. It also is like deeply anti-Semitic in like a philo-Semitic way, like dumps a lot of stereotypes, particularly about Jewish men. She's also kind of a passive observer of racism without seeming to like interrogate why. So it's a memoir, it's a book about being an expat. It's also a book like kind of lionizing the World War II heroes of Sweden and Scandinavia. And it also talks about like the sociological phenomenon of like the weird inferiority complex Swedish and Finnish people have. Like it's a really weird book. And frankly, like I said, 3 books in a trench coat, it's a disaster. I sincerely think that there is a good narrative in there, but this woman is so deeply traumatized and so willing to unpack that trauma in a productive way. She's just more interested in being like, I love Jewish men, but also they're abusive. It's really weird, and I don't know why she submitted this book for the prize that I read for it. It was real bad. Honestly, getting through it, oof, it was rough. So would like to meet, if you look at the cover, you'll think, oh, this is like a contemporary romance. It's not. The thing that I was frustrated about was the false advertising, and also just that the book wasn't particularly strong all over. Like, I loved the cover, it looked really cute. What I really didn't like was that it was kind of sold as a romance when it's really more of a coming-of-age novel. There is a romance central to the plot, but it's not developed. It's just kind of a disaster. The twist in the book is so obvious from the very beginning that I had no patience for it. I was like, get to it already. Like, it's not a good sign if reading your book, I know what's gonna happen, and I'm already exhausted by it. That's not a good look. And the love interests in the book, because there are a couple different ones, vary from boring to terrible. One of the heroine's like serious problems is her frustration with dating and like how she just wants to like, fall in love and start her life. And I'm just like, I haven't dated in a while. And I know that it's hard, but like, it's not so hard that I would contrive all of these like ludicrous romantic escapades in order to like vent my frustrations with the dating pool. It's hard to date, but this isn't how to do it. Like, there's some books that can carry off something ludicrous like this, like The Secret Bridesmaid. It is ridiculous to think that some woman will just enter into your wedding and professionally smooth it over for you and like pretend to be your friend while doing it, but it works because the world that she's built makes it make sense. This book is just so flat and uninteresting. I really wanted to root for it, but I couldn't. Talk Bookish to me has also pretty roundly gotten some negative reviews. There's some initial fat phobia in the book, and I was like, okay, we'll see how this goes. And there's just straight up adultery. The book is just, there's straight up adultery, and like, initially you think, oh, the girl is kind of in the wrong, but then it's the guy that's in the wrong, and he's kind of a dick and doesn't deserve anybody. He should just, he sucks. I hate him. I hate him so much. He's cheating and a liar who tells lies. And I just didn't like it. It's a bad book. Didn't like it. So Believe in Me is another romance I read this year, and I love the Worthington book. The first one was my favorite, but I really love all of them. I think they're great. One of the problems with historical romance is that it's kind of a feature of the genre that, there will be babies and lots of them, because people have this misapprehension that birth control didn't exist until before the 50s. People have been trying to control birth for a very long time, semi-successfully. But I really don't love historical romance that's all about babies ever after. I find that to be a little reductive, especially when like it is considered like the ultimate devotion of one's love to produce a child. Like, I think that centering children in romance is kind of problematic, partially because there are so many people who don't want kids, but also because like romantic partnership isn't always about parenthood and family isn't all about kids. And that's a really huge problem with this book, because this book is so important that the main character get married. Her family is so concerned about her getting married, despite the fact that she is wealthy and well-regarded and very eligible and very beautiful, and everyone likes her, and all the guys want to marry her. They are very concerned that she get married right now, or else something might happen. Like, they're not concerned about anything like real or ambiguous. Literally in one of these books, the kind of family patriarch said, we just want her to be happy, and in this family that means marriage and children. And that just smacked me in the face, because like, would they love her if she decided, I don't want to get married and have kids? Which, by the way, lots of women did. Like, lots of women in the past did not get married, did not have children by choice. And some didn't get married, didn't have children because they didn't have a choice to get married, because you had to be asked. And, like, frankly, I find it really reductive that this whole story is hedged on the fact that not does she have to get married for, like, an actual, like, external reason or an internal desire. Everyone wants her to get married because they're concerned that she is too concerned about becoming educated. And her mother, up until whom I liked at this point, Patience, who I thought was, like, a pretty decent character, is completely out of character, pushing her daughter to get married as soon as possible. I think that the Patience that I liked from the previous books would have lauded her daughter's attraction and interest in education and tried to find a more realistic way to pursue that. I think Augusta is a ridiculous brat. She is such an idiot. But at the same time, everyone in her family also sucks. So I just hated this book start to finish. And I also found it very frustrating because none of the problems in the book are actual problems. If she takes a year or so, 19 is not too old to get married. 24 is when you're pretty much on the shelf in, like, historical novels. But lots of women got married older. Like, it wasn't that you had to be married when you were 16, although lots of girls were married in their teens. I know this is true. But in historical romance, it is very much understood that you can be, like, up to 24 or so before they begin to consider you on the shelf. She's 18 years old, and they're like, oh no, people are going to think she's a blue stocking. People are going to think that she's so, people are going to think that she's crazy for wanting to get educated. Why do you care? You're rich. Like, these people are very wealthy and very well connected, and she has an excellent reputation, good breeding. It doesn't matter if she takes a year off to study, and also they should want that for her because they love her. Everyone in this book seems to think that she's crazy, and it's like, oh God. I wrote a whole blog post about why I hate this book and why I think it just destroys the whole series as a whole. I won't talk anymore about it. I could talk about it for ages, but there you go. I hate that one. So next, I actually read all of the Bridgerton books this year, and I read An Offer from a Gentleman, which is Benedict's book. I believe the third one. Detested it. Hated it. So this next season coming up on Bridgerton is Anthony's story, and I think I will like that because I enjoyed Anthony and Kate. But Sophie and Benedict, to me, is just a shitty love story. Like, I think Sophie makes some pretty bad decisions, and she's very foolish and naive. But also the cruelty that she's subjected to is kind of cartoony, even for the Bridgerton universe, which is universally ridiculous. I actually made a blog post, which I will link to in the description, about basically, like, my ranking of the Bridgerton books and also my ranking of their ridiculousness. So I rate them in the order of how much I liked them, and then I rank them in the order of how crazy they are. And this book, like, scored, I think, the highest craziness magnitude, if only for the scene in the jail cell at the end. But it's just such a bad Bridgerton book. Like, I don't think the Bridgerton books are the best historical romances by far, especially if you're thinking about things that have come out in the last couple of years, because these books are not new. These books are on the older side because the genre moves so fast. But Sophie, I'm surprised that Sophie's book has been published so recently. I would figure that it was older just because the mores of this book are not reflective of, like, what I would see in the genre even 10 years ago. Like, it's so immoral what Benedict does to her. And, like, I also think that this book is very slut-shamey. Like, there's nothing wrong with being someone's mistress. And if Benedict really loved her and wanted her to, like, be with him, he should have been better to her in the first place. But, like, he really shows his, like, ideas about class, and, like, really they're only allowed to have their happily ever after when they can pretend that she has some kind of social standing. I just think this book is kind of trash, and it makes me hate Benedict, and it makes me hate the whole family a little bit, because, like, they saw how he was treating this girl, and they were like, yeah, it's okay, it's totally normal that she should have a position in this house. That would be good, and he should totally get to emotionally manipulate her. Great. Frankly, I think Sophie's an idiot. Benedict's a moron. They don't deserve each other because nobody deserves what he put her through. But I digress. I hated this book. All the Bridgerton books is the only one that I seriously hated. And the last book that I absolutely detested reading this year, and this is actually the one that I hated the most, actually. It was called Blue Bloods Afterlife. So this book isn't out yet, so I can't say too much about it, but if you read the Blue Blood series by Melissa de la Cruz, you'll know what I'm talking about. I loved that series as a teenager, partially because Melissa de la Cruz does such great romance writing. She's an excellent romance writer, and she writes in YA and an adult. What I really hated about this book was how redundant it was and how it completely detracted from the original Blue Blood series, which I really loved. I think that it kind of brought it down in a lot of ways. And I think that it's also just so derivative and it's not particularly original. And it also like is weirdly about the pandemic, but like in a conspiracy theory way. And I hated it so much. I was just hate reading by the end of it. And there were parts of it that I did like things that I think with a little editing and some hard cuts would have been better. I think that it's just very difficult to return to a work that feels finished and make it new. I think you can really tell when you read something when an author is trying to backtrack on something that they don't agree with having done. And I think that what Melissa de la Cruz wanted to do was change the story that she'd already written, and she couldn't do that, so she tried to figure out a way to do it. I really hated this book. I loved the original series, and I don't know if it holds up because I haven't read it since I was a teenager, but looking at this, I really hope she doesn't start a new series because it's just so bad. It was really, really bad. It's one of those books that I'm like, this could have sincerely benefited from an editor. I feel like at this point she's written so many hits that they pretty much let her do whatever she wants. And that's really bad as a writer sometimes. Like when you don't have any constraints to work within, it's very difficult to like actually work within it, like play in the space in a way that's effective. And I think she just goes super fucking coconuts in this one and it just doesn't work. I truly hated it. It made me so sad because I love her work and I really wanted to love this book. I will put a blog post up once this book is out so that you guys, if you'd like to, can read about why I hated it. I think this book is kind of emblematic of what happens when an author really loves their characters and wants to, you know, come back to them, but really doesn't have a good avenue to do so. The book really reads as very tired. And it was very disappointing to me. Anyway, thank you for watching this first video of 2022. I'm really excited about what we're gonna work on this year. We have so many great ideas, so many big videos that I have to actually get the work done on. But once they are actually made, they will be up. This is the first one, but hopefully I will be able to get a TV related video up pretty soon. Oh my goodness, you have no idea. You have no idea how many videos die. Not videos that I have killed, but videos that just kind of die on their own. Like I wrote a review of Lindsay Ellis's latest book and I recorded that, but I just never got around to editing it because it was such a busy time. And then it's now been months and maybe I'll put it up if people are interested in it. But like so many like videos have been recorded and then just I've never gotten around to editing them. I don't know what the failure rate is. I don't want to know. God, I don't want to know. But you know, I'm hoping to get more things up this year. There are a lot of concepts that Sam and I have been tooling with for literally months that we want to get out in front of everybody, and we'll be so excited to do that for you. Welcome to 2022. I hope you had a good New Year. I hope you had a good Christmas, good holidays, and we will see you again soon. Bye. Say bye, Fozzie. Oh, who's a good boy? Good boy. He loves scritches.